All right, here we are. Okay, updates. So I've been working on the hands and I made my light maps way more detailed. So like the shadows and the lighting for my environment is much smoother and cleaner. The hands are a work in progress. I was experimenting with adding like a glowing light to the edges, and I don't really like it that much. Boop. But yeah, everything feels much more polished because of the shadow maps are much more detailed. Uh, yeah, let's turn on the lights down here. Isn't that beautiful? Everything looks so great. And let's go outside, shall we? Okay, so there's a lot of changes to the hibernation chamber. Let's pull up here and you can see everything looks a lot more polished. I have a ceiling with emissive lighting that I set up, and I removed all the spotlights from the room that was previously lighting this room. And so now the emissive lights on the ceiling are actually working as a light source for my light map baking of the room. Um, I added these little player tips. So like when I grab the handle, oh, another one pops up and then I grab that and it brings me here. And now I have to grab these. Isn't that cool looking? Yeah, I'm getting really good at, designing materials because, I didn't have to look at any tutorials to make this little animation here. Uh, boop. Yeah, I can't do anything yet from this position. I can't leave my pod, but at least like my shadow maps look awesome. The room looks well lit. And if you didn't notice, I have reflections on the floor that look pixel perfect accurate. And the way I did it was I took a copy of the room, of all the static meshes in the room, and I flipped them upside down and put them under the floor. And then I made the floor translucent with a little bit of transparency just so I can see through it to see, the flipped geometry. And then I made the geometry under the floor a lot more crude, I guess you'd call it. Like the geometry is about 50 to 75% less polygons. And the shadow maps under the floor are really low quality too. So it's not really affecting the performance of the level, right? But it looks amazing. It looks incredible. Even the door is reflected. The walls, the hibernation pods, and the ceiling you can see reflected. Yeah. And then I added these lanes because, I think I got the idea from watching, what was it, Stargate when I was a kid. And you see these lanes in the hallways in the military facility in the movie. So I just added some lanes that look pretty cool. And, you know, none of this stuff is textured, by the way, except for like the numbers there, like the 3 and the 1. Those are actually textures. Um, that caution tape on the door is also a texture. But everything else is using geometry. Even this lane here is just a bunch of polygons. That's all it is. Even like the edges on my gloves, I'm just adding an emissive color to the polygons themselves. Isn't that cool? So no texturing at all for the hands. And that's what I want to do. I want to make this game as colorful as possible without using any textures or the least amount of textures possible. Yeah, so I'm super happy with everything. Everything looks so polished, and I can't wait to leave my hibernation pod and walk around. I'm going to add a personal locker for each pod, right? Because the soldiers who are in these pods are able to, well, they left their personal belongings in their locker before they got into the pod, right? So I'm going to have my own locker here, and I'm also going to put computers, like a little desk with a computer system next to each hibernation pod. And that's how you will, gather information about your situation and uncover the puzzle to opening the doors. So, yeah, that's the next thing I'm going to do after I program these handlebars to let me throw myself out of this hibernation pod. I'm going to make some computers and I'm going to put a gun in my personal locker, an SMG gun, so I can play around with the gun. But yeah, that's where I'm at now. And I'm just so happy right now. It looks so good. It looks so, so good. And I can even interact with my touchscreen even though the pod is open. Isn't that cool? Yeah. My physics are still working, even on the bars. Everything looks good. Yeah, it looks great. Anyway, that's it.